I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first thing is to approve the agenda. Does anyone have any questions, additions, changes to the agenda? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second by Amy Jurek. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, the agenda is approved. First thing, Mike, I assume you're going to take this for Jeremy?
Yeah, I am. That I set it up with him that he was running on a busy schedule, that he said he may or may not be here. But as you recall, back in May, you authorized Jeremy and the department to submit an application to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry for their matching grant program. Well, lo and behold, they were successful. DNR doled out some money, so they are providing a 50% grant up to $4,900. The other $4,900 is to be split between the city and the Rural Fire Association. So each of us would have to pick up $2,450. They didn't necessarily have the money in the budget. Council said that they would cover them out of kind of the contingency fund. So as part of the approval, if you approve this, would be to approve the transfer of the $2,450 from the council contingency over to the fire department to take care of this. They're looking at, as you can see from the materials enclosed, they're looking at trying to be able to purchase approximately 20 pagers with an additional 3-year warranty, so they can get a total of 5 years on the warranty. $8 in programming. He said that depending upon where the proposals come in, this was their estimate back at the time, but they have to have, under the grant program, we have to have 2 quotations. So if the council approves tonight, they'll go after the 2 quotations to be able to purchase this. So your action tonight is to really approve or authorizing entered into the grant contract agreement with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry, and then the transfer of $2,450 out of the council's contingency fund over to the fire department budget.
Okay, anyone have any questions? Is this the one that we didn't think we were going to get?
No, this one we thought we would get is the one that they're working on, and the SCBA's, the airbags that we've applied to the feds for. They've got their application in for a second time this year. We just haven't heard as of yet, so that's still a possibility.
Okay.
But yeah, this one, if they wait every 2 or 3 years to go in and apply, they can generally get some money out of this program depending on what their needs are.
Okay.
So my question on the contract, though, is does our city attorney read the contract?
We generally do. This is a grant agreement from the state, and we typically don't really get to play with this, but normally all contracts and agreements I have, and this one, Scott just got back from Europe, so before we finally send it in, I'll double check, but normally any contracts or agreements that I bring to the council, I've already gone through the city attorney in that review. This one I did not, because I just got it from him late last week, but I will ask Scott to take a look at it before we execute it.
Okay, yeah, I just noticed that there are some obligations in the contract with some reporting and
It's pretty consistent
obligations.
it's pretty consistent with what we normally have had in the past
Great.
on these grants, and so it's not unusual for us.
Yeah,
So
I
we-
figure something with the state, is pretty boilerplate.
It is, and like I said, we've had this before, and so we turn it over to finance of the department, and Jeremy, we go through what's contained in here, and then make Patty aware of it. She the auditors pick up all grants.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I guess I'll look for a motion to approve the grant and the transfer of the fund from our contingency.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Sean Ryan, second by Amy Jurek. Any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0. Next, it looks like this is the second reading of the adoption to the new height restrictions on accessory buildings?
Well, there's a number of additional items in there, just in a brief review for our listening audience, is that this relates to discussion on the residential accessory structures, specific to what's allowed as an accessory building height, construction methods, and a recent change in the state building code concerning structures 200 square feet and under. As you can see in the materials that Ken provided, he's not with us tonight, he's on vacation this week. His planning commission held a public hearing back in June regarding proposed amendments, including exempting structures 200 square feet and under from getting a building permit. And that's in accordance with the state building code. There was a change in the state code. Secondly, restricting accessory building heights to 15 feet or under versus the current regulation that allows them as tall as the principal structure on the lot. And then lastly, to allow all construction methods if they can meet the building code requirements. And they only had one comment. At the July 26th meeting, information was provided to the Planning Commission that the Minnesota Residential Code does have minimum standards for roofing and siding, which staff noted would provide for the necessary minimums for construction if pole-type buildings were continued to be allowed. And so you have all of those changes in the proposed ordinance. We posted that ordinance, put it on the website. I think Ken had a couple of comments where he answered some questions. And so in the ordinance that you have in front of you tonight, the changes are occurring to section 11 of the city zoning code. Specifically, there's the deletion in section 1A that deletes access doors or openings shall not exceed a height of 10 feet. That's deleted. In section C, no accessory building shall exceed the height of the principal building is changed to in no case shall an accessory building over 200 square feet in floor area exceed 15 feet in overall height. D, the last change in there is that any accessory buildings which are 200 square feet and under in floor area shall not require a building permit, but still must meet applicable setback requirements and cannot exceed 12 feet in height. And then lastly, pole buildings or post and beam constructed buildings shall be allowed as a construction method if they are able to meet the state building code. So those are the proposed changes. Your consideration is the final adoption tonight. If you approve it, it will be published next week and then become official.
Any comments?
I think it's a good start, but there's things in there that could be a little tighter, I think. But we went through that last week, so I just want to leave that known.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to accept the second reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Second by Maggie. Okay, I got it. Maggie Bass, second that. Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0. Mr. Stika has the floor now.
How are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good. First thing in your packet would be the resolution accepting the Park 11 addition storm sewer improvement and to issue final payment for that project. The project was actually done last fall. We were waiting for the seeding to take hold and verify that that's going to be a good job, and it turned out really good. So final application for payment is $5,269.97. We got the IC 134s and lien waivers from Hazelton Construction. 2-year warranty would start after today and go until 2019 on that project. So it's recommended to the City Council to approve the attached resolution accepting the work and authorizing final payment and release of retainage to Hazelton Construction for Fairville.
Okay. Any questions for Glenn on this? If not, I guess I'll look for a motion to approve the final payment.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion by Sean Ryan, second by Amy Jurek. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay.
Thank you. Next thing on the agenda would be to consider and approve the attached resolution that would enter the city of New Prague into a master partnership agreement with MnDOT. Last time that this agreement was approved by the council was in August of 2013, expired in June of 2017. This contract's been again looked at by the city attorney or Scott Riggs' office.
And approved. And approved from A's perspective.
Okay.
And approved. And this contract basically it engages the city of New Prague along with MnDOT to do minor repairs. This kind of oversees like the contract we have with them or the partnership we have with them for removing the snow on Main Street. Also includes things like planning of the reconstruction for the 2020 project. So that's what this master contract does for the city and for MnDOT. So it's a recommendation that the city council approve the attached resolution and enter into a master agreement with MnDOT. It'd be a 5-year agreement, so it would expire on June 30th, 2022.
And this just does not relate to the 2020 project. It's
This
everything
is-
that we kind of do with them, like you mentioned, snow.
This is an agreement that says we can enter into separate contracts to do repairs, to do reconstruction, everything from mowing grass on the side of the road to do a little pothole repair to a major reconstruct on their highway.
Okay.
Any of those that would involve working with the city engineer and preparing something would come back to the council for your review and approval before we did anything.
I wanted to point out that in our packet, every other page of the contract is missing. So we didn't get the whole contract.
Oh,
I'll take a closer look at that. This is the one that I have. Because I have everything that you gave me. I'll look at that one too. I'll look at that and give it to you.
Thank you. I actually do read these things.
I will, because I thought I did double-sided on it, so.
She passed
I'll have
the
to check
test,
on
huh?
that.
That was a planned error. Okay. Any other comments?
Huh?
It was only when I gave it to you.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Just get along. There's no other comments. I guess I'll make a motion to approve to go in with a master agreement with MnDOT.
Second.
Second by Sean Ryan. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Glenn, you're doing a lot of work. Well, Ken's gonna owe you big.
He is the only thing, there's no question about it. Last thing I got is, back in August of 2017, the council heard from a number of different groups, being the Means family, the VFW, the Legion, about constructing a new Veterans Memorial in Memorial Park. At that point, the council instructed staff to verify where the utilities are, get exact locations on them, and kind of see how it would fit, what could be done, things like that. So the first map, or the first map that's up there, we just drew in an area, and it's the white doesn't mean that that's what we would expect it to look like or anything of that means, but that's the area that if we decided that they could not cross a pipe, put anything on a pipe, that would be the available area without getting into the 10-foot utility construction area or building something on top of the pipe. The orange is the force main that is coming from the lift station at the library. The yellow, the one that runs at an angle, is the 28-inch clay storm pipe. The yellow one coming from Main Street that's a little bit to the west of the force main is a 12-inch, again coming from Main Street, tying into the 28-inch. Two things that we don't know yet and still are going to be investigated is there's the slim possibility that force main might go away because we might be able to reroute some of that sanitary because of the Main Street construction. The other thing that's got to be looked at yet and hasn't been by FCH is that 28-inch clay pipe adequate, big enough to handle any changes with storm sewer on Main Street? Do we have to put in a bigger pipe, which would mean then we could possibly realign it, which then would open that area up quite a bit more. So those are two things that we just don't know at this point. That could be a deal changer in a good way. I'm sorry, I don't have the clicker like Ken got.
I'm impressed that the way you just jumped right on
I had a lot of help
the
with this. This is not all me.
You practice all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering, he had his lunch and everything when I came up here.
Yeah, I was still eating,
And it was only 2 slides.
but it's big.
They're big slides.
One thing that we did, and it was just a shot in the dark that me and Ken looked at, did a bunch of measuring, is again in that, now it's in red, the available space, is you could fit an area just like that in that available space without encroaching on the 10-foot utility easement and or crossing or building on top of a pipe. It's just something we just threw in there. Whether it's a good idea, whether anybody likes it, we just fit it in there, and just kind of as a reference. So that's kind of where we're at with this. We know that the utilities are located and they're accurate. The fourth main ended up being farther to the east than we first anticipated, which really kind of squeezed that area pretty tight. So there's some unknowns, but that's where we're at. That's where we're at with this at this point. So staff recommends the city council consider the information, maps prepared by the city staff concerning the location of the underground utility locations in Memorial Park.
And when will you get the information from the engineers on the 28-inch and then the force main, if that can be realigned with the 2020 project?
We're probably quite a few months down the road. I don't have an exact date for you, and I apologize, but we're probably quite a few months down the road because we haven't gotten into that design aspect of the Main Street project yet.
All that's been done up to date is trying to look at the conceptual design of the highway improvement. And Chris at SEH has not started into, like Glenn said, all of the local utility design for water and sanitary sewer, and the storm sewer would be part of the design of the highway. And all of that's not scheduled to occur till into 2018. So it's going to be a number of months before we can give you that answer and or what the related cost might be on preliminary estimates until they come up with those designs. And so in the coming months here, we won't be giving you a better defined timeline as to what that might be, but we can tonight.
Well, there's a lot of fundraising that still has to go on as well. And that's why, I didn't mean to imply that it needs to be done sooner than later, but I was, even if it's a year or two down the road.
You know, we wanted to try to do tonight with the verification and the field checking that we determined we did not have to go get the survey, that the staff through our GPS and the mapping that we've been doing and the field work that we did, were able to go out and specifically locate manholes and pipe directions and measurements. And so what you see is the best plans that we have at the present time. Both Lynn and Ken were out, and our other staff trying to field check this, all in an effort to try to report back to you as quick as we could as to what's out there. And so we can report this is what the available space is at the present time, subject to the council making a future decision once we have better information on the water, the sanitary, and the storm.
Correct.
And I think, unless I'm speaking out of turn, I think the council still would like to, keep this site available for the Veterans Memorial. We understand that we don't have all the answers yet, and even if we had to do anything, if we just had to move the stormwater a little bit, which is probably the cheapest option, then moving that force main and move the monument a little to the east, I think it still would fit in that area. So, but again, once we, from a fundraising standpoint, I guess, I just want to let them know that the direction is that we still would like to keep this site available for the Veterans Memorial.
Yep.
So, and then it's just a matter of, once we get into the next phase of the deal with the engineers, then they might answer a lot of our questions already, so.
Yeah, that's gonna be really kind of a, it's either gonna open it up or it's still gonna kind of crunch the
Yeah.
space.
Okay. We appreciate it. You guys turned around quick. I thought the city workers were having a party over there. I saw them all the time. I even had to go over there once to see
We made quite a few
who brought
trips out there.
sandwiches, but
The first couple of times we went up there, we thought we had everything we needed, and then Ken starts drawing, he goes, you know what, we really gotta do this, so I met him out there again, and we measured up again.
no, appreciate
So
it.
it worked out pretty good. We're real accurate with what you're seeing there, so we feel good about that.
Are you guys in communication with the group?
We have not shared anything with the group at this
Okay.
We
point.
wanted to report to the council tonight, and
Correct.
that if you still were in concurrence, then we would report back to the groups to let them know that the council's still interested. However, we don't have the information, so the site configuration that you see in front of you is the best we can provide at the present time. It may be able to change once we have better information, probably sometime into the latter part of 2018 maybe.
Okay. You need any action on our part at this time,
Not
Mike?
unless you want to reaffirm your continued willingness and interest under those conditions to try to make that site available, but what they see is what's available now, contingent upon future utility decisions by the council.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to make a motion stating that the council would still like to reserve this spot for the Veterans Memorial so that during their fundraiser, they can feel confident that this council feels that that's a great site, so.
Second that.
Okay?
Would that be subject to future utility
Yeah,
decisions?
yeah, we'll evaluate it once we know all the things, and then we can make that thing, but. And I got a second by Amy Jurek. If there's any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Out of turn, I want to say thank you and God bless you all.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
See you, George.
Okay, Mike, moving along. Okay.
The next item we have, Ken and I attempted to put together information following the Joint Powers Advisory Board between the city and the school, following the August 14th meeting where they took a look at the outdoor pool and summer recreation program, but not really including the new aquatics center, and not including, doesn't include the morning ball revenues and expenses, which Ken thought should have been included. That the combined determination by the school for 2016-17 showed a paper loss of about $36,000 for their fiscal year, which ended June 30th of 2017. However, it should be noted in arriving at that identified loss of that $36,516, that about $26,000 in swimming pool lessons revenue was moved from June in that fiscal year to the current 2017-18 indoor aquatics fiscal year. So it took it out of one fiscal year, moved it into another fiscal year with a slightly different part of the program, which was a first, kind of unusual. And so what that resulted in was a paper loss of about $36,500. And when we go to take a look at that, there was also the purchase of some technology for tracking users that's also used at the new indoor aquatics center. And then also, and I wasn't at the meeting, they showed with what limited information they provided as far as some downward trends as far as some of the baseball programs, softball programs that have historically been provided under this program between the city and the school, but really under community ed. As you look at this information, Article 10 of the current Joint Powers Agreement, which went into effect in 2016 stated that the district's annual operating losses or gains in excess of $2,000 would be discussed by both parties, and they shall endeavor to reach an agreement on how those losses or gains would be dealt with. There's a separate piece already identified for the indoor aquatics, which is separate from all of this. And so the piece that the school finance director had noted for the committee that over the time frame of FY 2011-12 through FY 2015-16 is the combined, I believe it was 5 years, that netted the school district just under $18,000. And it was her recommendation to take that off the operating loss for 2016-17. And that would result in the remaining amount in a loss of about $18,723.76, which I think she was asking, Sean and Maggie can confirm that, as she was asking the school district or city to take care of that. We noted in the materials we provided to you that the financials did not include any of the city's annual swimming pool operating expenditures, which we provided in your packet on the 2 pages behind the memorandum that showed our annual actual expenses for 13, 14, 15, 16, and then budget 27 on the operating expenses. We didn't include any of the capital. And in that annually is the $11,000 contribution that we make from the city to the school to offset the swimming pool and the summer recreation program. But you can see if you take that off, our operating costs are 8 to, give or take, what's the difference there? I'm trying to, 6 to 8 to $12,000, $15,000. That isn't included in the program, nor is there any of the labor that we expended historically, and it's probably, as you look back, it's probably a historical accounting mistake that we've allowed to occur. It was in place before I arrived 9 years ago, and we've talked about it, but we haven't moved it, is our wastewater staff have all gone to school to become certified pool operators. And so under Glenn's direction and work with them, we've provided all of the labor on the pool startup, the day-to-day inspections and review of the facilities that occur every day, and then the final year-end closeout. That wastewater staff, we last accounted for it specifically when we were looking at, well, what did that labor amount to? That in 2015, and last year that we really looked at that specifically, is that we had upwards of between $31,000 and $32,000 in labor that's accounted for wastewater. That really is an operating expense that really should be probably in the swimming pool budget, but it has not been. And I think that has just been a historical thing that got started, and like I said before I got here, as a way of trying to support the operation with existing staff. The wastewater staff has to make daily rounds for lift stations, and so they would always stop at the pool and check the pool and help at the beginning of the season and the end of the season. And you know, if we have to do any repairs, sometimes we pull in guys out of the street department to help as well. And so you really don't see any labor cost in there, which it probably should. And so when you take a look at adding that in, is that has a fairly healthy contribution by the city as well, besides what the school invests in their program for running the pool and the concessions and all of those pieces, as well as part of the summer rec program, where we don't have any rec staff, that they've used the community ed staff. So in the end, they were looking for, as we came into tonight's meeting, to have the city contribute about a little over $18,700. As I took a look at these materials, I forwarded them to the school superintendent. He and I met this afternoon, and I went through some of this and tried to point out that there were some items that I didn't think were being taken into consideration. And as you take a look at the movement of that $26,000 out of what normally would have been a revenue on the outdoor pool rec program for the summer, that got moved into the indoor aquatics operation. On paper, that resulted in quite a loss. And so had that not occurred, we would have seen something in the vicinity of about $10,500. And so the city hasn't historically had to make any contribution to the school, but because of the new joint powers and the anticipated change in the level of activity and usage of the outdoor pool, the school, if you remember, was quite concerned that we took a look at this so that they didn't have to absorb significant losses on the outdoor pool in this consideration. So, short-term recommendation to you is that in the conversation and wanting to make sure we try to maintain a good working relationship with the school, I asked the superintendent that in light of the information that I provided, was there any reconsideration of what the council could consider tonight? And so he proposed that the city and the school split that loss of that 18.7, and we cut that in half. And so our contribution would be $9,361.88 versus what you saw in the memo. I don't know if there's anything, Maggie, you and Sean want to add, or we can respond to as you look at the materials. We don't necessarily have that budgeted. We have to find a way to incorporate that, but probably would be something that we should allocate back to the outdoor pool operation on the operating budget. But I might have to find ways on the contingency side of to cover that. I think the budget should do okay, that we could probably pick that up internally this year versus trying to delay payment till after the 1st of January, that I find a way to absorb that. So I turn it over to Maggie, who's the chair of the Joint Powers, and Sean, who's off the council on that, whether there's other information or things that you think is appropriate to consider. I think I did hear in the mix is that there were trials and tribulations by trying to run both the indoor and the outdoor pool during the year. There were some good days and some not so good days in the coordination and the staffing. That biggest issue that we're running into is being able to find enough certified lifeguards and having enough that are age 18 and above, because you need to have somebody that's there. If they're going to be the head lifeguard or the head person in charge, they have to be 18, and I'm not certain that issue was technically complied with, but we were made aware of that under the Joint Powers Board as we try to deal with the new indoor pool. There were issues whether there were changes in hours appropriately communicated, but I think that the school did feel, once they finally started tracking some of the numbers, that there was a downward trend in some of those numbers, that they're seeing that in the summer rec program, in both the baseball and the softball, that a number of those things that traditionally been community ed are now going into various associations, and pulling some of the youth out of the community ed side and pulling them into their associations, which is resulting in a slight decrease. So this is an area that we'll have to continue to work and refine with them and continue to get better numbers so that we can provide that to you and the school board to make decisions as we move forward.
I think we probably all figured there'd be some unique things that would happen when we open a new indoor facility and things like that. So, this doesn't surprise me per se. So,
as you look at, let's see, what page is it? I don't know that we included it, but we have the early indications of what our contribution is going to be on the indoor pool, on the indoor aquatics facility. I think the budget numbers that were looked at, because there really were no revenues in 2016-17 for indoor aquatics, and that piece said you take the operating revenues minus the operating expenditures, and then whatever the net gain or loss is split between the two. The budget estimates that I think Bryce and Dwayne had put together that you saw when you approved the budgets was going to be about $35,000. They came in at about $38,200, which we're going to have to incorporate in our 2018 budget as an accounts payable to the school, and that will be a new twist in our annual budget. And so going forward, the revenue piece should look a whole lot better. They don't have a full year underneath their belt as of yet. This is the startup from the very beginning of the sharing between the city and the school, that because there really were no revenues, the reason that they moved that $26,000 is none of the swimming lessons began until after the 4th of July. If you remember, there was a late startup because of the pool trying to get done and get finished. they moved all of the revenues associated with the swim lessons into the 2017-18 aquatics, indoor aquatics budget. So there are no revenues showing up in the 2016-17. So that'll help us quite a bit more next year, that we'll have the transfer in for that, and depending on how they account for them next year, we should see a little bit of an improved picture as the whole, but we'll have a full year's operation on our belt. But the early projections came in close to what that expectation was to get started with the joint powers board.
So this year, we're gonna, in our budget, we're gonna build in the 32,000,
38,000.
or 38,000 our share, or whatever, the 50%.
That's correct, which we wouldn't have to pay until our 2018 budget, but the school
Right.
would pick it up as an accounts payable from the city.
Are we gonna just continue to do that, or are we gonna eventually try to, you know, let's say, incorporate it so that we're not always having that payable on there? That-
Well, the reason we looked at that is that if we do it just purely from a budget standpoint, it's gonna be a by guess and by golly, whereas the number that we put in after the fact is an actual number, and that gives us time to consider it in our budget. I mean, the same thing would end up happening, is we would have to put in for next year a projected number.
Right, I was just wondering what your idea would be, because I'm obviously, if you're gonna put in, you know, next year's budget, the 38,000, do you put additional 19,000 in to cover half of their annual budget, you know, our portion, you know, that's what I was just wondering, but what you're saying is.
That 38 is half.
Right, but I'm just saying, for like next year, you got the 38 in our budget, but, you know, let's say, then their budget comes out and it's gonna be 25. You know, because we're not on the same budget cycle, are we always, in your mind, are we always gonna be behind them 6 months?
Yes, because
Okay.
there was no way to put it on the same playing field, at least by doing it where their numbers are picked up as of the end of their fiscal year, which is June 30th. We're able to get that number fairly quickly from them to put in our following year budget. She said that she can't pick it up as an accounts payable, so that when we put that number in the following year's budget, it will be exactly what we will have to pay. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to put some guesstimated number in there.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that, I just wanted to know what the mindset, so when we start talking budgets, you know, we obviously know that we have this 38,000 that have to build in, and I was just wondering, do we have to build in any more?
No, that's.
You know, but what you're saying is, no, we're always gonna be 6 months behind them because of the
Correct.
timing of each other's.
So from our end, we'll always.
And they're fine with that?
Yep,
Okay.
we reviewed that, I did with Sandy when we put that whole joint powers agreement together. If you recall, that was one of the areas that we had a little bit of a challenge in trying to figure out, and she just needs to be able to pick it up so that it shows in her year-end budget. But if we do it as an accounts payable, and she gets that paid in January, once our budget goes into effect, she's okay with that from a financing standpoint.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that they're fine with that, and because, yeah, it makes sense for us, it's easier for us, but.
It truly is. We're putting in an accurate number every single year, that we're not having to guess, put some overinflated number in there that we can't substantiate other than it's our best guess.
Yeah, okay.
I think one of the things that we also need to discuss is the outdoor pool, and are we going to experience a deficit annually with the outdoor pool, especially with all of the swimming lesson revenue going to the indoor pool. So it really then just comes down to attendance at the pool will be the sole revenue.
And then costs like, you know, obviously, you know, if we're still losing water and things like that, you know, what is it? Those decisions, you know, I think we'll probably start talking about those this.
But I'm also talking about budget.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So that, yeah, do we have to budget next year for?
Right. Yes.
I'd like to make sure that that 9,000 goes into the outdoor pool segment of that budget, when you find it.
Being transferring.
Yeah, and transfer it.
Well, what we.
Just so we have the accurate cost when, like to Maggie's point, when we do discuss it during budget season here next month, and in October, that we have an accurate number.
Yeah, we would quote that expense, as you take a look at page 3, our operating budget, that number would go into that part of the budget so that you could see that.
Okay.
And the outdoor pool is closed now, Glenn, right?
Yep, closed yesterday, Sunday.
Okay.
So I think the challenge that this startup year, and I think it was for both parties, especially with the new aquatics director just coming online this year, trying to take a look at the staffing, is that the one day that specifically stood out is when we did the free day and they had to pull the staff out of the outdoor pool to be able to cover the volume of residents that, and school district patrons that came to free day, that, I'm trying to remember what those numbers were, up in the 600s as I recall.
12.
1,200, excuse me. It was just huge, and so they pulled the staff there. There were some other transitionary days that they had some challenges, and I think we're finding at the Joint Powers Board, I wasn't at the meeting, but the big issue is finding the number of lifeguards to man both operations. You know, Bryce came in new, not knowing anything about the outdoor pool, and having to do all the startup with all the features on the indoor pool, that he was severely challenged. So, you know, I think it will help to have this year under our belt, and I know he and the Joint Powers Board will be working as to how do we improve that, what can we do differently next year, and hopefully we can get more guard strength through the high school program that we're trying to get started, you know, to help augment that, since we can be able to justify that there are employment positions, the kids that go into that will be able to count on. And, you know, they don't have to drive elsewhere, or it's not just for the summer, and so it'll be year round. So hopefully that will help improve the process. But you know, it will come down to, as we take a look at this and you as a council evaluate that, is that you know, whether the numbers are there, and they tried to get into a better accounting of what that attendance was, and so you'll be able to evaluate that. And I wasn't there, but I think the terminology they used is what was the cost per splash, so to speak, as far as how many users are there over the course of the year divided into the cost of running the outdoor pool. You know, what does that amount to, and is that a number that the council believes is appropriate to continue to keep that open versus making other decisions? And I know that's not necessarily a decision tonight, but you may get into looking at some of that as we go into the budgeting process. And, you know, I think we need to give it at least another year and see how that goes, having done this as kind of a transition year. But the equipment still is aging and getting older, it's not getting any newer. And so our fear, I think, from Glenn and the public works side of things, is that you know, hopefully something doesn't go wrong, and you know, with the expectation of having that opened up and available for nice sunny days, that we don't run into issues with any of the equipment or the underground piping or other things that will cause that to require us to shut down the pool during the summer operation. So hopefully you'll be in a state of being able to make that decision versus letting the facility itself make that decision. I don't know, Glenn, was there anything you experienced this year that was unusual?
No, nothing than what we've experienced for the last few years. Just losing of water. All the equipment held together. We actually didn't have any major pump replacement or anything this year. We had a couple minor.
So we tried using dye to try to
Yeah.
figure out, just
We-
nothing apparent, huh?
Nope, we called US Aquatics and got all their best bets of trying to find this leak, and we had the fire department help us out with dive teams and down there with the dye, and according to US Aquatics, if you're gonna lose water through a crack in the pool, you'll see that dye disappear, and we never saw it. Last fall, this spring again, we went in there, a bunch of guys with grinders, and anything that looked like a crack that could be leaking, we ground it out and put in some grout that was recommended by US Aquatics that's gonna stay there. And if we changed it, it's not a noticeable change as far as reducing the amount of water that we lose every day. We could have changed it, we just don't, we don't see that. So, yeah, I really don't know where all that water is going.
Yeah, probably a pipe underground.
You would think it's gotta
Sinkhole.
gotta come up some, that's why you have to, that's why you don't have to water your lawn, it's all going that way.
That's right. That ball field looks awful green.
Will at some time we have a count of the season and the,
Ryan was not at the meeting, maybe,
I think they
Yeah,
probably
we have-
should have a pretty accurate count with the new tracking, yeah.
I think on the 28th, right, is our next meeting?
Our next meeting's on the 28th, and Sandy was going to come prepared, I believe, with some budgetary items and also attendance items.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Mike in regarding this issue of splitting the cost with the school district? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the splitting of the cost with the school district of what, $9,400 some dollars, Mike?
936188.
936188.
A second.
Got a second by Sean Ryan. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye. Any opposition? Okay. Now we're to that consent item already. Any questions or issues on anything on the consent agenda?
I just had a quick one, is the plow that's on here in the consent, I thought anything over 10,000 kind of gets pulled out of there, but did we raise that rate? Did it use, I know we raised it at one point, it was a $5,000, and I thought we raised it to 10. This was probably, Chuck, you might remember, 4 or 5 years ago, there was, I found it strange that there was such a big item just on the consent agenda.
No, I think,
That was my choice.
Oh.
I think what
There
we
is
talked
no dollar
about.
amount on consent.
Right.
It's what has to come to the council for approval, that under the old charter stuff, it was 5, we talked about trying to raise that to some level, that's really kind of open-ended and undefined, so.
Well, I thought we raised it, I thought, and I could be wrong, I thought
I
it
thought it
was
was-
10,000.
I thought we discussed, and that we talked that if it was within the budget parameters, it could be taken care of under consent because we've already approved that item during the budget process.
Okay.
I think that's what I recall.
And that was our rationale with this, is just, kind of it's a snow plow, there's not a lot of detail to it, and
Right,
if there would be a question, then it could always be brought up and discussed, so,
Okay.
no, nothing more than that.
So it was my attempt just to help speed up the meeting.
No, and
Nothing else intended.
and I was fine with it, I thought the cap was 10,000, I wasn't sure, that's what I was really inquiring about, but.
I have a question on the, as we close out and prove that retainage being paid on the project, it's not on here, is that because,
Wanted council approval before we actually paid it?
okay.
So it'll be on the next
But these
AP
aren't paid
run.
It will
anyway.
be on the next
It'll
payment.
be on the next one.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah, these will get paid and then signed this week.
all right.
Okay, any other questions on the consent agenda? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second by Maggie Bass. Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0. We're at that miscellaneous. Patrick? Were you at the Renaissance this
I was at
weekend?
the Renaissance this weekend, both days.
Was there good crowds?
Saturday's crowd was a little bit better than Sunday's. Maybe it was the humidity, because the humidity was high on Sunday.
Okay, good. Mitch, you good? All right. Glenn, anything else?
Baseball field is going slow, Mother Nature's not wanting to play ball with us, so the dugouts are dug out. And the contractor tried putting in a granular fill today in the home dugout, but 2:15 or so it started pouring on them, so that was the end of that project. But we'll keep going forward with it. One other thing I just wanted to make the council aware of is in 2018, we were going to budget for membrane replacements, membrane filter replacements. The company has come to us and said, we'll give you a better deal if you place your order now. Don't have to pay for it till after the first of the year. We won't ship them till after the first of the year. They'd like the order placed now. So we decided to get bids, since it's close to, it's $500,000 is what it will probably come out to be. So legally, we have to get bids on that, sealed bids on that. We're not expecting to see any other bids, because this company is the only company that makes this filter, and they got the patent on it, and there's just no place else to buy it. But we technically, legally have to bid it. So just wanted to give you, the council, a heads up that we'll be advertising for bids for membrane filter replacement, or the filters. Not the labor, the filter.
And that's already set aside in the capital budget, correct?
There has been $55,000 since 2013 set aside, so we don't have the full 500. Figuring up to the end of 2017, we'll have $275,000.
That was the engineer's best estimate back when they put the capital budget together. And we're finding now as we try to go purchase that it's more, so we'll have to revise our capital estimates going forward, but we have sufficient cash on hand as part of the wastewater budget to take care of the rest of it.
Okay.
Has that cost gone up that much? Because it seems to me I remember 300,000 and now it's 5, or?
There was an agreement made when that plant was built with the company that used to supply these filters called Simmons. That company got sold to Evoqua. They honored the agreement. In all actuality, if they bid as they're talking, if we place the order now, it will be less than what that $700 per filter agreement was. I don't know the rationale behind the decision of $55,000. After talking to John Peterson a number of times about this through the years, the only assumption I can make, or we can make, is they decided to put 55 away with anticipation or knowing that they'll have to make up the difference at the end of that period. If these filters would have gone 8 years or 9 years, they'll be 7 years old, which is the estimated life of them. If they would have gone 8 or 9 years with it, naturally, we would have probably been closer. The problem with that is this agreement ends February 1 of 2018. The price goes from $700 to $940 a filter. So we kind of we lose everything we would have gained. Even if we could keep the filters running, if we didn't go with that $700 agreement, we'd still be behind the 8 ball on that. So, but we're losing production on it. The capacity's going down. So we got our 7 years as they expected. It's just, that's part of doing the business at the wastewater plant, I guess.
No, but I thought that for some reason the 350, that's why that was budgeted at 55,000, because we thought after 6 or 7 years we'd be in that ballpark. And now, I was just curious if, since there's only one supplier, if that price has gone up
No, the
a
agreement.
lot more than we ever thought.
We got actually the signed agreement that was
Okay.
signed back in the day of the plant starting up.
Okay.
And the agreement was through Simmons, now honored by the new company at $700 a filter.
Okay.
I don't have a good answer what the thought process was.
Okay.
Like I said, my assumption, our assumption would be, or is, that we'll be at 350,000 or so, and we just gotta make up the other 150,000 or 160,000, whatever the price would have been.
Well, that was in the overall capital budget, and that came from the former Public Works Director, and Glenn has done his right, is that in taking a look at that, if you remember when we started to put those original budgets together with the estimates and the capital replacement, is that the council was phasing in the rate structure, and in taking a look at that, in phasing that rate structure in over 6 years, based on what the budget could support and what was gonna be there, and whether there was any expected growth to occur or reoccur from new houses coming in, is that it was a challenge to fulfill all of the capital needs at the levels needed as we were phasing in those rates, knowing that after 6 years, we would get to that point and that we would have to make readjustments in some of those capital allocations. And so when you look at the growth that's occurred with the contributions in 2016 and 2017 again, the settlement on the Cedar Lake matter is that there are additional assets that have come in above and beyond what we were expecting. And so those will be used to help do the capital replacement on the filtration membranes. But we will go back as a result of this, now have to re-estimate and, re-project going forward, because ideally is that, as you take a look at that, those key elements, as you know, that are gonna happen every so many number of years, is you'd like to have those funds set aside to take care of those replacements. The other one, Glenn, is the lights, I'm thinking of the UV lighting that has to be replaced, or one of the other pieces similar to that.
Yeah, the disinfection, the UV disinfection system, It's always been $5,000 a year, and that's been sufficient. We've been able to replace the units or the bulbs, including ballast and things like that, with that dollar amount. So that's worked out pretty well. We've always been able to stay within that amount.
Is there now that was supposed to be an A-rated facility. And we've talked about this before but we've been unable to get that A rating through the state. But if we did receive that A rating, we would be able to sell that waste as opposed to donate it. Is that not correct?
You would.
And then and I don't know what the going rate is for dried waste, but I don't know if that could help offset some of these.
The problem with trying to sell that product is you'd actually have to find a company that would buy it from you and then market it. Because to just be able to say, I'll sell you a truckload for $500, can't do it. You can give it away, but you can't sell it, because at that point, you have to be testing it continually. I think we've talked about this before. The example I used, if you go to the hardware store and you buy a bag of fertilizer, it's going to tell you the percent of chemical that's in that bag. That's what you got to do. So of the times that we've discussed it with Bolton Mink and kind of explored that, there's really no way we would, as a city or a wastewater plant, be able to produce the information that would be required to market that product. If you could find a big, say, fertilizer company that you'd say, okay, I'll sell it to you for $500 a load, and you're responsible to market it, to test it, to verify that it is this much nitrogen, this much phosphorus, things like that, you could possibly go that route. Find that company is proven to be the conflict.
But we can't even do that if it's not A-rated by the state.
You're correct, and our challenge has been with
Have we attempted though recently to
Yeah.
so, okay.
It's been state issues, and what we need to do is to kind of come back to you with a report as to what we've tried to take a look at. The state has not been real cooperative in that sense, and so, based on this discussion tonight, what I'll do is I'll go back with Glenn Bolton, and we'll get a report back to the council to let you know that we are an A-rated plant, wastewater plant, so that's already it's given.
Well, that's what we paid for, was an A-rated.
Right.
But yet we're not.
We have that, what
Okay.
you're talking about, and that's not the issue. The
Okay.
issue is whether the sludge would be able to get to a level that we possibly could get
Sell.
to
That's
sell.
fertilizer.
And so there's been a number of issues in trying to get that accomplished with the state that have been unproductive, not from our end, we've supplied everything that we needed to, but the state hasn't been quick on the draw, and we just need to get the report back to you that Bolton Mink has discovered, and Glenn has discovered, trying to handle that, and so that's why you really haven't heard us back, because so far we've been successful.
They always find some reason why.
I was just curious if we were keeping, trying to
Yeah.
try.
And I apologize, I haven't reported back to you, and that's our fault or my fault, but every time we seem to fix their little, this is what we think you should do, and I think then you'll have a Class A product. You do that, and then they go, oh, but probably you should do this. It's like, well, what's the conflict here? I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of a big round. So
Okay.
we've been chasing ourselves to that one.
But we are designated as an A.
Our plant is a Class A plant, yes. We're trying to get Class A rating on the product.
Right.
Kind of, it's two different things. Our plant is a Class A plant.
Right, and if it's $500 truckload, we're, not that I would dismiss that, but it's not gonna solve our
No,
budget.
and I pick, I
But I don't know if
just
it's
threw out
$500
$500.
or if it's $5,000 a
Yeah.
truckload, that
And-
might.
And
We don't even pay to truck it, that the farmer comes and picks it up, and we load the truck, and we have no expense with disposal or trucking or anything.
Right, I just find it funny though, that the state required us to put in, we followed this plan to meet state guidelines, but yet we can't get the state, and we put a state-of-the-art plant in for $30 million. And somebody at the state is preventing us from becoming an A-rated product where we might be able to sell that.
But
As
we're-
opposed to just
we're-
give it away. I find it ironic that we can give it to a farmer
Yeah.
that can use it on his fields, but we can't sell it to him,
Right. But you gotta understand, or you gotta keep in mind, we're talking about two different animals. We're a Class A rated plant for sending water back to stream. We're looking to get a Class A rating for our product to be able to market it.
Sure.
So of a lot of discussion with the engineers, talking to St. Peter, talking to the Sioux, they're all kind of fighting the same thing. And the other thing that nobody else has been able to come up with either is somebody that actually wants to pay for it.
Okay.
Without going through the regulations that you
Sure.
have to go through for marketing a product. Everybody's, yeah, we could market it, but, you know, that's gonna take a whole nother lab, and you're gonna have to hire how many people, and it's really kind of a different animal that I don't know if we even wanna get involved in. The beauty, the best scenario would be is if we could find some big fertilizer company that came in and said, I'll buy it, give you a penny on the dollar for it, I'm gonna sell it. You know, that would be the perfect scenario for us. Right now, it costs us nothing to get rid of it.
Right.
So we really do have a pretty good situation. We're just not making any money on it.
The ideal thing is if the Moonwalker and Sioux facility, our facility, and I think St. Peter are basically same types of facilities, if somehow
But
someone would look at all three of them and say together,
But all of the end products are not the same. Ours goes through the burning process.
Yes, dry process.
To create the dried pellets. St. Peter, if I recall, they use a sludge press
Yep,
on the end.
the Sioux dries theirs.
And so they're the same type of wastewater treatment, but with different end products of what you do with the sludge, so to speak.
right.
So,
No, I just made a statement not knowing what each facility, but I mean.
A few years ago, I thought it was gonna be the perfect scenario because parts are so expensive for that plant, and so I called everybody up and I says, okay, you know what I think would be really cool is, I'll keep this part on, you keep that part on hand, and you keep that part on hand, and that way if we need it, we're now all three keeping 3 parts on hand, we'll just call each other up and go get that part. We couldn't find like hardly anything in our plants that matched, that were the same. They do the same, the end product's the same, but there's nothing in there that's the same, so we couldn't even get away with that. I had the greatest idea in the world.
Talk to Dave, you know, he wants you to figure out that road stuff.
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
Anything else?
That's it.
How
Thank you.
about, you got anything for Ken or Bruce or Jim? There's not there yet?
No, I already briefed them on what they gotta do for me after they come back, so
Okay,
we're good to go.
okay. Mike? Deb? Maggie? Amy?
No.
Sean?
Nope.
You said you had a couple
Without Ken here, I can't bring up my
ordinances?
ordinance.
Okay.
The task that you gave me last
The
meeting.
task.
but we'd have to recommend that we table it till Ken comes.
That's right, that's right. The only thing is, at the end of your packet, you did talk about the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. I think that's something we should maybe discuss during the budget process, if that's something that we may want to proceed, or if we feel that being just with the League of Minnesota Cities is adequate for us. You know, so I have nothing else. So with that in mind, I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Amy Jurek. There's no other comments. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Thank you, everyone. We're out of here.